A very good evening to you on this beautiful Wednesday night. I thought I'd start on the mat straight away so we can get designing. I'm just popping these beautiful beads out. So in this hematite coin, we got 3 different sizes to play with. And I got a couple of ideas what I would like to try, but I want to know what you would want to try with us. What would you want to do? I think they would be perfect to do some bead embroidery with. Perhaps to grab some little crystals, or you can use a color or cross the colors, doesn't really matter. All 3 different sizes together, or we can, I think that's actually the same there. Somehow ended up with 2 strings with that one. We can just use one particular size and color and just add some seed beads around it. Now, let me know in the comments if you fancy doing a bit of bead embroidery, or shall we play around with a stitch doing all sorts of different things. Now, we could combine somehow and have made kind of like, what I'm thinking is to add a smaller bead onto a bigger bead, or maybe even the one bigger one as well, because they kind of like the same size. So we could do that as well. There's loads of different things we could do with these beautiful beads. I love the smaller ones. I love the larger ones as well. They're just a beautiful coin shape, very flat. So we could even do like a base. That would look really good as well. We could do like a square stitch base and stitch some of these on the top. I think that would look fantastic as well. There's so many different things we could do. So I'm just quickly going to say hello, and then we can get started. Good evening, Dulce. I hope I said your name yet. Such beautiful colors. Celia, good evening. Dan is here. Hi, Kitty. Just watched this morning. I got to go out Wednesday. I love these colors. Andres, good evening. Nice to see you. Evening, Kitty. Feeling drained as I have just come back from my Jen's funeral. Oh, bless you. I'm so sorry. Sending you big hugs and kisses your way. Good evening, Lucy is here as well. I'm just going to add a little bit of hand cream on my hands. My hands are so dry at the moment. They're just like, I don't know what's going on. Maybe I'm not drinking enough water. Right, okay, so what are we going to do? Lucia, good evening. Right, so are we fancying having a bit of bead embroidery, or do we want to do stitching? Let me know in the comments what you fancy doing. I've got a bit of base fabric here. If you want to have a go at bead embroidery, or do we want to have a go at sort of doing some sort of stitch and putting these beauties together? That one would look quite nice on the top of this one as well. We could kind of sort it on maybe with the seed beads on top and then have some sort of stitches in between. Barbara is here. Good evening, lovely. So nice to see you there. What time is in Florida? Are you 5 hours behind us? It must be like 2 o'clock in the afternoon for you. Angela saying she likes bead embroidery. Link above from the coin beads Kitty using tonight. So that's this one. You need to click on if you want to have a look at these ones. Lucy popped the link there in there for us. So let's have a go. A little bit bead embroidery with this one. Now, bead embroidery does take quite a bit of time, so we perhaps just going to get started and show you the technique, and then you can take it from there. So I would like to do, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see the whole thing. So I would like to do more sort of a bracelet style with this one. Now, before I start, I'm just going to move these beads out of the way. Before I start, I'm just going to grab a pen and kind of draw out on one side. We're going to sew the beads on top of it, so it doesn't really matter. We could color this white material as well using a felt tip pen to the color of the beads we're going to be using. I'll probably do, maybe I do the silver one. I quite like this silver color as well. We could do it on top, and for that one we wouldn't need to color, but it doesn't really matter. So we could do all sorts of different things. We could do something bigger in the middle and smaller on the side, or we could just do a long strip. It's up to us how we want to have our sort of bead embroidery bracelet. And I have got a ruler, cool. So I know I need about an 8-inch bracelet. So I'm gonna go 7 inch and 3/4 because then I can attach some sort of clasp to it. So my bracelet, what I need to do is gonna have to be about from here all the way from, I guess, here. And I can either imagine doing a little strip that would look really good as well. So I'm gonna let's say if I want it about that wide, I'm gonna draw one at the top because it's quite a big piece, so we can draw one at the bottom as well. So if I want my bracelets about this big, then I can kind of got the outline where do I need to sew my beads. Now equally we could have, and again I'm gonna go to centimeters for this one. I know centimeters better. So this would be, if I'm gonna say I want to make it 20 centimeter, then this would be my middle point here, which is 10 centimeter. So if I want something which is a little bit bigger or wider in the middle, maybe I want to have a kind of like a, let's say 3 centimeter in the middle, but I only want to have maybe 2 centimeter on the side. So I have got, or maybe 1.5, even going down to 1.5. So I will have like a natural shape to this, like a diamond shape. So again, I'm just freestyling this, but if I would probably measure it out even better if I was planning. We could have like a flower shape in the middle if you wanted to. There's so many different things we could do in terms of bracelets. Now I'm gonna go with the straight one, so I'm just gonna cut this one out. But that's how you start. So you plan your workout and how much you're gonna do. Now always leave a little bit on the side, just sort of you got fabric to hold on to. I'm just gonna cut this all the way. There we go. So this is what we're going to be using now. The gold would look nice as well, actually, with some gold beads. Because they're so flat, can you see like it's going to sit really nice and flat on the top. Good evening, Sharon. Bernie's saying she's got some 4mm at Hey Dog the other day. Yeah, the 4mm is this size. Let's do the gold. I got all 3 colors in the gold. So the 4mm is this size. So I could even have like 8 mils in the middle. I'm not going to have them that close as they are. I'm going to space them out so I can go like little swirly seed beads in between. And then the 6 mil probably would be too big, but I think the 4 mil loop would look gorgeous just here and there. But equally, we could just have the 4 mil on there. Tish is here. Good evening. Lovely. Nice to see you. Mina is here. Good evening. Debbie saying evening again when you had a love day. Yeah, it's been a really nice day outside. Haven't been able to get out. I wonder, could you have the larger coin beads in the middle and the smaller ones around? So absolutely. I'm going to cut these up. So then we can have a little bit more of a play with it. So I could have a larger ones like that, sort of spaced out, and then have the smaller ones. I'm just going to use these 4mm ones and just cut some off like in between those ones. Because we're making up our own pattern, you could do really whatever you like. You know, I think that would look really good as well. Or we could just have the 4mm ones like that on the side, sort of on the side. We need to leave enough gaps so we can go in between with one. I'm going to zoom back in so you can see better. So we need to leave enough space in between so we can go in with the seed beads. I kind of like this pattern. I kind of like this to have it. Let me just push that there and this up, to have a sort of pattern like that. But we could do it equally, like, you know, randomly as well. It doesn't have to be, and because we're doing embroidery, it's not exactly going to be the same spaces, so and it's going to look very organic. And that's what's great about doing freehand embroidery, where you just you're just going to go with it. So I'm going to grab some seed beads for this, and actually I'm going to grab some crystals as well. I think some nice little crystals. Let's go. you actually have this, or we could use the 2mm round. We got these rondelles we could use. We got the 2mm rounds. I'm not sure what colors I have here, which will suit of these ones. Maybe that one, maybe not. I think I might stick with that one, because if I go with bronze and golds, I think they're gonna go really nicely together. Although, grabbing this out, a purple in between, the gold would look really nice as well. But I think I'm gonna go bronze and gold. I think that's gonna look really good. And then seed bead wise, I don't want to be million miles away from the color, so I either gonna go something really light or something that, oh, I just had, if I use the black diamond seed beads, what have I got? Like a grayish color crystal. This is the thing, choosing the colors can take you just as long as doing the project. It's always the way. And that's a lovely color as well, that purple look. That would look nice with it as well. But then it takes it into a totally different tone. Like, this is the thing, the different colors you add together. Oh, I like that purple. I think I'm going to go purple tone actually. That's decided. Right, so I'm going to have, instead of the gold and the bronze, I'm going to have that purple. And I'm going to use either those silver line seed beads to kind of tone the color back, or I have got some others here as well. Maybe a lustery color, something. Oh, these are nice as well. But I need something a bit more purpley on the purple side. Ooh, this one. Again, I'm going to have all the colors then from my shelf. This one perhaps, or I think this might be too dark. This one has got a coppery sort of shine to it. Maybe that will kind of like bind the whole thing together. So we're going to have lilac, dark purple crystals. I'm going to take this out, pop that down, and then use those beads. Okay, so we got our kind of like color combination done. Let me just take this out of the way. We're not using these. Pop them back. Pop this away, out of the way, and this one out of the way. So I'm going to grab a needle, and then we're going to start beading. So I'm going to grab and actually I might even grab the pen and slightly color it in underneath it. So I'm just going to grab a needle and a thread. I just threaded it. Hang on one sec. So I'll take the pens. No. These are the ones I want. So let's have a look. So especially if I'm working with darker beads, yeah, I think that will be a nice color. So if you're working with darker beads, I just did a little go there. I would go and color this in just to give a little background color so that white wouldn't come through too much. And this is just a metallic marker. It's a pro marker, but there's so many other brands out there doing, let me just move those down, doing permanent markers. It has to be a permanent marker, because if it's not permanent, then it's going to be coming off on your, as you're working with it, and it will get on your hand, it will get on everywhere. So I'm just going to very quickly go in and color the background in to this color. You don't have to sort of go over that much, we just want it so kind of you can't see the white so much, and like be a little bit even about it. It doesn't take long at all. I'm just going to run down the whole of this bracelet, just coloring in, just giving that dash of color to the background. Brenda is here. Good evening. Rachel, good evening. Debbie's here. Good evening. Cherry, good evening. Julie's here. Evening, Kitty and everyone. Haven't done beading for a while. but just starting again, lost my mojo for a bit. Look, I'm reading the comments. I'm reading the comment, and I went right out of the line. Oh, bless. See how this is when you don't pay attention what you're doing. Right, very quickly, right down to the bottom. There we go. There we go. Right, so we colored it in. Now, well, usually I wait like a couple of minutes until it dries. We are going to start, and we're gonna, it doesn't matter how your thread path gonna look on the other side, because you would be adding a base fabric underneath it. So we're gonna have all sorts of stitches on here, but they're gonna disappear. And I'm gonna tell you a trick when you glue the whole thing together. So I am going to, when you do bead embroidery and you've got larger and smaller beads, you always want to add, you can do this, you can do it. So we can either start in the middle, or we start on one side and bead all the way along. If you start in the middle, probably like you will have more of an even pattern to the side, because when you get to the side and you got maybe half an inch left and another full pattern wouldn't sort of work on one side, then you can always sort of cheat, but then and make kind of like half a pattern, or just add more smaller beads on, but then you would be doing it on the same side as well on the other side. So our middle is going to be, I just want to mark my middle. I'm just going to fold this in half. My middle is right here. And what did I do with my pen? So this is my middle right here. So I am going to go, and I'm just going to put a knot on the end of my thread here. I have I added that bit of hand cream to my hand, and it's all slippery, so I just added a little knot on the end of my thread, and I'm just going to come up. So I'm going to come up probably about, maybe, actually the other thing what I'm going to do is I'm kinda gonna do like a middle line so I can follow it easier. We're not going to see this line because we're obviously going to be going over it. There we go, that will do. So we're going to follow that line. So I'm going to go into the middle, and I'm going to come up maybe about 5 millimeters to one side, and I'm going to come up on that middle line, and that middle line is going to show me I'm going to tackle it down. So I'm going to go back down, and then I'm going to come back up. So I'm not working, the bead is not hanging off the knot itself. I'm going to come back up on that middle line, or sort of close to the middle line as I can get. I'm going to pick up one of these larger beads, take this all the way down, because I don't really know like how much, like you don't want to have a large gap because you don't want the thread showing either side. So I always like to take the larger bead down, push it along with my needle as much as I can push it along, and then I would stick my needle right down on the line on the other side. There we go. So when I pull this through, the thread is just going to be the right size for my bead there. Heidi, good evening. She says, evening, just found you on YouTube. We're just having a go a bit of a bead embroidery with these beautiful beads. Now, because this is kind of like a larger bead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to step back, and I'm going to actually sew this on one more time. I'm going to go through the bead one more time. So I'm just stitching back to the other side, going through the bead again, and then I'm going to go down again. I think I'm going to add some seed beads around it and see how is it going to look like. So I want to come up probably about 1 millimeter away from the side of my bead. It doesn't really matter where you come up as long as you're about 1 millimeter away. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick up 4 of my beads, of my size 11 seed beads. I'm going to let these go down again, all the way down. I'm going to hold my thread parallel to the sort of kind of like the beads needs to be hugging my larger bead here. And again, I'm going to push those beads right down and I'm going to stitch down. Now I want to stitch up in between bead number 2 and bead number 3, just like that. Then I'm going to go through bead number 3 and 4 again. And I have stitched the first 4 beads down. And from here, I'm going to go ahead. Now you can either do this with 2 beads. I like to just keep continuing doing 4 beads. So I'm going to pick up another 4 bead. Again, I've taken it down, I'm squishing it up, I'm stitching down. Oops, I got caught. There we go. And then I'm gonna come up, I'm gonna step back 2 beads. Barbara saying, have you done a sun catcher? I haven't done a sun catcher at all. Maybe we should do one from, we should do one. I could do some and put some out in the garden on the veranda, actually. That would be really good. Or a wind chime. There we go. With going through the thread at the point you come down, help secure them weekend the thread. It doesn't really matter because I'm using super long size this. It's quite a strong thread. And as you can see, I haven't stitched through it. I stitched right next to it. But even if I stitch through the thread going down, it doesn't really matter. For this one, bead embroidery is such a forgiving such a forgiving way to do beadwork, because anything goes really, and it's just gonna look like organic as it is. I think I got a little knot on the end there. I'm just gonna undo this quickly. I've been getting knotted up all day. I don't know what's going with the knots. Sometimes like you can have a whole day without knots, and other days all you get is just knots. It's the luck of the draw. There we go. Knot is apart. I always undo the knots with 2 needles. So I stick 1 needle right into the knot and then I pull them apart rather than trying to get them apart with 1. Come on. 1 needle. There we go. So I stitched up between 2 and 3. Or not 2 and 3, like a step back 2, and then coming through the last 2 again. And what's wrong with you, thread? There we go. There we go. Let me just see if this is 1, 2. Gonna twist around. No, it's not twisted. So I'm going to be able to squeeze another 4 in. Definitely, I got a large enough gap there. But always checks. Once you get kind of like around, you want to check it. Now I probably could fit a 5th bead in there, but if I fit a 5th bead in there, it might be a little bit too sort of too tight. Maybe we will be. I think we will be, because even if we put it together, yeah. So I'm gonna stitch down. See, I'm gonna stitch down and see. And see, on the back of it, we're going to have stitches coming up and down all over. It's not a problem. And I'm going to step back 2 beads again. Through the last 2. And I just got a space for 1 bead there. So this time, I'm just going to pick up 1 bead. And I'm going to straight go into the very first bead, because we want to make this bead. So at the moment, I'm not sure how much the camera is going to pick up, but that bead at the end, I mean, if I pull it up, that bead at the end, it's a little bit wonky. So we want to make straight. So I'm going to pick up a bead and I'm just going to come to the very first bead. You can even run around the whole beadwork here. And then while you're running around, you can pull it a bit tighter. There we go. So that's our first little hematite bead is on, and we added some seed beads around it. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stitch down. I know it's not quite like the middle, we got a bit more room on this side, but doesn't matter. We're just going to make the bracelet a little bit thinner, or we just color in a bit more on the other side if we need to. So I want to add the 4 mil, and around the 4 mil I'm going to add the crystals. So again, I want to be able to have enough space. So just kind of like do it by eye. I don't need to measure it, just do it by eye, but I want to have enough space so I can add the crystals around it. And then we're going to go ahead and add these larger ones on. And once you finish, I'm probably going to do like a couple of inches, but once we're finished, we will come back and fill up the gaps. So I want to add them just like that. So I'm going to come up right about here. I'm going to pick up my smaller hematite. Take it, Saba, good evening. Oh, Heidi's saying, I'm glad I'm not the only one getting knots. I am always getting into knots. And then stitching down. I don't necessarily need to go and stitch through this one again because this one is quite a small bead. Now I'm going to grab the crystals and I'm going to add the crystals around this. So I'm going to do exactly the same technique as I did with the seed beads themselves. Just pop them to the side. I'm gonna come up here in between the seed beads, just there. And again, I'm going to do the same technique. So I'm going to pick up 4 crystals. Sometimes you might want to stitch the crystals down one by one. I'm going to do the same as I did for the seed beads. Again, I'm going to pull it back, make it go down my needle, step back a couple, and then go through the last 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick up another 4. Actually, let's just try this here. I think we're going to have 1 in between. That's going to look good too. So picking up another 4. 1, 2. So you kind of like plan it out. You have a plan of action, but then sometimes it goes awry. Oh, Lynn, good evening. She says it's 1:24 p.m. here in Missouri, USA. Oh, bless you. So you are then 6 hours behind us. Is that right? So again, I'm just gonna go down there. With bead embroidery, you don't have to pay that much attention. Everything is pretty much approximate. And I know now for the last 2 beads, the last spaces, I'm only gonna be able to fit in 2 beads, but there's a way to check it. So I always, just going through the last 2 beads there, I always just pop my work down. I'm gonna pick up a couple of crystals. I'm going to take this all the way down, and then I kind of like, I'm going to measure it in. Is it too big or is it enough? I think it's enough. It's just enough. So I'm going to stitch down. And then if it was 1 bead, then I would have just straight gone in. But because it's a couple of beads, I'm going to step back just 1 bead. There we go. There, I want to be there just right, and then I'm gonna go into that last one and join it with the very first one. Now I think this bracelet is narrowing down on us, and what's great about bead embroidery, you could use all sorts of different beads. You don't, like, you know, you can really mix and match. I can go and grab some size 15s and add some size 15s on there if I want to. to fill all sorts of gaps. Bead soups are perfect for bead embroidery. So when you have got little bits of beads left over, you can just use them up. So I'm going to stitch down because I want to stitch on my other, and I'm going to stitch up about there. And I think what we're going to end up here is that 2 middle crystal there. Can you see that's going to be shared by the 2 coin beads here? I'm going to take this on and I'm going to stitch it down. And again, I'm just going to, or maybe have I got enough space? I kind of want them to be in the same kind of space. And even though like I went up there, I might like sort of stitch it diagonally because I want to exactly get it in the right place. I think I'm going to do it like that. So there's always cheating there. You can always pull it to one way or another to put your bead on there. So I'm going to stitch it down. I'm going to come and jump back. These 2 beads in the middle are going to be shared. So I'm going to jump towards the crystals. I'm going to come through these 2, which is in between the 2 little hematite beads, and come through those. I'm going to pick up another 4 crystals. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to take this down and I'm going to wrap it around the other hematite bead just there. Just pulling it up nice and tight. I'm going to step back a couple of beads. This is saying, love this, can't wait to give it a go. This is just what bead embroidery is one of my favorite things, and freehand bead embroidery is like freeform peyote as well, which is what you would do from a bead soap. Actually, we should do freeform peyote some point. I haven't done freeform peyote for a very long time. Probably years, but it's so much fun, and usually you do it from a bead soup. Right, I'm going to pick up another 4 crystals. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, I'm going to take this down and see, and that should be kind of enough to go all the way around. I'm just going to tap it in a little bit, and I'm going to stitch down just there. And you can see the back of it. Stitches are all over. It doesn't matter because there is a base fabric you would be adding onto this. So I'm going to come up, stepping back a couple of beads, and then stitching through that last 2. And I'm going to go into the middle one. So I'm going to connect these beads to this middle 2 again. There we go. And then I'm gonna stitch down, and I will be stitching up. So I want to have a width for seed bead, just that. So I'm gonna need to stitch up somewhere here, just about. And I'm gonna add my next coin on, my next large coin into the middle. There we go. Where do I need to? I need it to be sitting just about there. So I'm going to stitch down. Then I'm going to go back. I'm going to jump back with this one. And I'm going to stitch it on again. So making it stronger. There we go. And stitching down. Debbie's saying peyote is my favorite cheese. I love peyote. But don't you feel like sometimes you go in waves? Like I do herringbone stitch for so long, and then I move on to peyote stitch, and I move on to another stitch. Like you always like sort of jump from stitches to stitches. I got another knot, look. I think it's a night of the knots tonight. There we go. Now I'm very quickly going to add some seed beads around here. because I want to show you how to. I love doing this. I could be sitting here all evening and doing this, but I really want to show you how to fill the gaps in between, and I might possibly grab some size 15 seed beads to give even more definition to it, but you could use anything up from your stash. There we go. So I'm gonna start again. I just added 4. I let them go all the way down. I push them up against my thread, so I got a good snuggle finish on there, and coming through the last 2. Just cut the thread there. There we go. I'm gonna pick up another 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, I'm gonna take it down. Zoom in a little bit more. Gonna take it down. Again, I'm gonna find where I have to stitch down. Just there. Step back. Again, we're gonna have a little bit of a gap, but we will fill that up in a minute. And then come through the last 2 beads. I think some nice dark 15 would be really nice on this. What's going on with you, thread, tonight? I'm not this thread tonight. Come on. There we go. Play nice. Play nice, thread. 1, 2, 3, 4 again. Brenda's saying not enough coffee. Yeah, I didn't really have enough coffee today. I think I only had 2 coffees and usually have like 5. And taking it all the way down, I'm gonna step back 2 beads. Just finding where I need to come up. With the base fabric, you can prick it as much times as you want, because the fibers, how they've been glued together, it's quite stiff. So I reckon it's probably about maybe a millimeter thick, or 3/4 of a millimeter thick, but the fibers, how they've been glued together at the same time, it's a very stiff material, but it is soft enough to work with as well, to put your needle through. Stepping back 2 beads, and I'm just going to have to add 1 extra in there. Coming through the last 2. And I'm going in and adding 1 in. Now, if you wanted to, like if you want to really precise, you could be measuring at the gaps. You could be drawing down dots, the where you have to come up and where you have to go down to add the larger beads, so they are precisely in the right place. You could really plan it out in the planning stages. I just wanted to get started and show you some of the techniques. So let's say we went all the way down on our bracelet and we added all the beads, all the larger beads we wanted to add, and we are ready to fill up our gaps. So I would be filling the gaps, all the gaps in between, and can you see this one is a little bit bigger, this one is a little bit smaller, but it doesn't really matter because it's all very organic. We are stitched it together. So I'm just going to stitch down here, and I'm going to grab some size 15s for this, and purple. Where are my purple size 15s? On the top. Oh, I even got some hex cuts in here. They would look good too, but I'm just going to grab some purple size 15s, or I think maybe this color would look really nice, which is a little bit more sort of a muted color. I think this would look really nice with it. So let's try this one. So I'm just going to come up. I'm going to come up sort of about that much space, like a 0.5 millimeter away from the previous seed beads. I'm just going to pick up some 15s. Now I want to have like more of a shaggy finish here, so I'm not going to be sort of coming back and tightly sewing them down. I'm going to pick up maybe 2, 6, 8. Let's say 8. I'm going to pick up 8. I'm going to take this down, and then I'm just going to find the place and I'm going to sew it down. I'm going to sew it down right there. But instead of having it like really tight, I'm just going to step back a bead. Maybe 6 would have been better. Maybe 8 is too much. But I just want to make my size 15s to have sort of a little looser finish. And then I'm going to come back and let's say I'm going to just come up there. That will be good. Again, I'm going to have to pick up 8 now. Because if I started with the 8, I have to go through the 8. But I think 6 would have worked better. 6, 7, 8. Again, I'm going to take this down. I'm going to see where I would be needing to go down. And I'm going to step back a bead. So I would need to go down there. So I'm going to bring my needle back and just stitch down there. So I'm going to have, again, a little bit of a curvy finish on there. Now gaps like here, I'm going to come back up next door. We're going to have to add less beads. So I'm going to pick up probably 4. Let's see, how does 4 look like? 1, 2, 3. What do we think so far? Do let me know in the chat. What do you think so far? I picked up 4. I'm just going to measure I need a 5th one, I think. There we go. And then I'm just going to stitch down there. So I'm just filling up the space, whatever I have on there. I'm pulling it tight. And then I'm going to come here. I think here 3 beads will be enough. Just kind of like judging by the size there. And again, I'm just going to go down on the edge. I can also add some more around the crystals if I wanted to. There is so many different things we can do. Now, if I want to, here I can turn directions. So I'm just going to jump on here and come up on the side. I want to come up quite close to the previous row, so it kind of somewhat. And I think I'm going to need 4 beads here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see what 4 looks like. Take it all the way down. Yeah, I think 4 looks going to look good. And I'm just going to go right in there in the corner. Just like that. So I just change direction. Next one is a little bit further out. So 3 beads will be enough. But each one of my little loops here, I have somewhat like a little bit of an arch on it because I want them to look like a little bit disorganized. And some of them are further up, some of them are further down. But once you fill all the gaps up, it's going to look quite good, quite organic. Or you could go back to the other technique we were doing and stitch them down. Probably with size 15s, I would stitch them down maybe every 3rd bead. And again, I'm going to come up here. I'm going to pick up another 3. Lily's saying beautiful. You could add some pearls from texture, absolutely. But we could add seed beads on one side and something else on the other side. Like we really just, it's up to you what you want to add on there. I'm going to pull that down. So like I can change directions and all sorts of different things. I'm going to come back here. And then I'm going to pick up 8 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I'm going to stitch. Oh, let's take it down. I kind of like know where I have to stitch down. That's the beauty of it. Once you kind of get started and do a few pieces, you will be doing it by eye. You don't need to take your beads down. You can just do it by eye. So obviously the next 2 would be butted up against here. So I'm not going to add any more there. I'm going to stitch back. I'm just going to stitch back here and add some in here. So I'm going to pick up a couple of beads, take it down, and then just stitch down just there. So again, I'm filling up the gaps in there. Equally, you could come up in between. So we could, even if you filled it up, and I'm just going to do this. I can always take the beads off. I can come up in between the hematite and the size 11 beads. I'm just going to come up here. Again, I can pick up. I'm going to pick up 4. I'm going to take it all the way down, and then stitch in between, stitching down. So then you would have a raised row on the top of the size 11, and in this case I would definitely go back and do it in the same method how we added the 11s. So you can keep on building up and building up all the way around, adding all sorts of different textures. Now I'm gonna do one more of this, so you just kind of see how it goes around. But then I really want to talk to you about, I don't want to leave you talking about how you could finish this up, because I'm just conscious of the time. And again, I'm gonna stitch down. You can add more layers to it. Even though you're only working with seed beads here, you could add more layers to it. You can always add more pearls. There's all sorts of different things. Whatever you have in your stash, you can just stitch it down. I'm gonna bring it in and show you real close. Come on, camera. Are you gonna focus on me? If I bring it up slowly, are you gonna come with me? Are you gonna come with me? Sometimes, let me zoom out a little bit. Sometimes you need to zoom out a little bit so you can focus. There we go. So you can really build up your layers and layers and layers of that crystal. Is a little bit wonky there. So if you find that you got a bit of a wonky crystal, I would, and I'll show you how to fix it that as well. So let's stitch down here, because I need to come from the other side. So if you find yourself, you have got a wonky crystal, which we have here, just stitch up right as close as you can to your hematite coin, and then you could either go through the bead and pull it through, but you can go and catch the thread path in between the two crystals. And I'm just gonna go, I'm not stitching down, I'm just gonna go and catch the thread path, so I'm kind of like looping around them. Can you see? And I'm gonna pull this in, and then I'm going to stitch back down as close as I can into the bead. So I'm pulling, and when I pull this tight, can you just see, just pull the crystals closer to the little hematite bead itself. So I'm going to leave this one like this. You could go and keep on filling it and filling it and filling it with all sorts of different beads all the way along. Really, it's up to you, but you know, you're just stitching up and down. There is another technique with bead embroidery, what you can do when you can sort of stitch down a whole row of beads really quickly. I'm going to have to show you that another time. So what I usually do, and then I would go ahead, and I need to cut this short. So I'm not going to cut right to the beads at first glance. I'm going to leave about 1 millimeter and cut all the way down. And then what you would need to do, I would turn my piece around. Obviously, we've got beads all the way down. And then I would come back and trim it as close as I can trim it to the seed beads themselves. And my needle is kind of butted against the seed beads there as I'm cutting from the other side. But what I want to avoid, I don't want to cut through any of the threads. So you can see, you can go very close to your threads there, but you don't want to go over your thread. So first you cut it from the front, and then you cut it from the back. If there's a little bit of edge there left, don't worry, because you can sort that out later on. So from here, you would, once your bracelet is finished, you would be getting a backing fabric, which is like ultra suede or alcantara as well. We sell alcantara, which is Italian faux leather. It's a beautiful material to work with, and you would need to glue that on the back to hide all of these little or big stitches on the back. So once your piece is ready for gluing, what I usually do, I spread, and I usually use E6000 all the way onto the back, and then I will pop the Alcantara on it. But because we're making the bracelet, and I'm going to zoom out, so just imagine that's our Alcantara and wear it onto the back of it. So because we don't want our bracelet flat, we want our bracelet curvy, and when you glue down, and then when then you try to bend it, sometimes the Alcantara at the bottom can, so if I glue it flat and I'm bending it, it's not going to do it because it's not glued, but you can have these little bubbles all the way along your Alcantara actually creasing up. So what you need to do is I've got a can of Coke here, so I'm going to use a can of Coke, but you could get a can of tins of any sort of thing, baked beans, sweet corns, anything you have at home. So you spread the glue on there, and you're gonna add your embroidery on there, and then I would add the whole shape around a cylinder, anything cylinder, really sort of pat it down, get those creases out from the back, and I would actually either pinch the end of the material together, or if it's a bigger can and your material doesn't go all the way around, then just with a couple of stitches, just to stitch the two ends together and leave that to dry overnight. And when it comes out next morning, well, first of all, your bracelet is going to be nice and curvy shape. So if you go out somewhat, but it's not going to go out all the way, it's going to be nice and curvy shape and really comfortable to fit it. And then wear it. And then you would cut the back, the Alcantara fabric on the side to the size what you be having. So you will have two nice edges. And then you would take your needle and you kind of like stitch up and down all the way along and add a row of beads on there. So you would be just coming, I might as well just do it on here to show you. You would be coming from the back. I usually like to come from back to the front. So I'm going to stitch up here. I'm going to pick up another 3 beads. 3 beads usually makes a really nice picot. 1, 2, 3. And then as I'm here, I would just go 1 bead wide in front of me and come from back to front as well. And then push those there and then pick up another 3. So once I glued it together, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stitch the ends. And as I'm stitching the ends, I'm adding some beads to the side. So if you look at your bracelet from the side later on, then we're going to be going back to front every single time, adding this nice little picot edge. And that will cover up your material. Is going to be really nice on the back. Now, when I usually do this, for example, if this one is purple, but I'm using a black Alcantara or a black backing fabric, then I would change my thread to black to match it, so you can't even see the little stitches on there. So that's, I guess, that is in a nutshell of bead embroidery. But we could be sitting here talking for hours, and I could be showing you more stitches as well. But I think that's kind of like enough to start with. And I made a right mockery of here. I'm going to have to cut this off and start again. But I just really wanted to show you that how you can do it. This one doesn't look really good because when we stitch down, the beads went down. But in a nutshell, you could build it up and up and up. If I had bicones, I could be adding bicones. So bead embroidery, you always start with the larger beads, then you work your way down to the smallest beads. And at the end, you just use the smallest beads you have, or we could have used size 11. It didn't have to be 15. We could be filling this gap with size 11s as well if you wanted to. There's so many different stitches. There is so many different. Even if I wanted to now, I could go over and add more lines onto the top if I wanted to. There is no right and wrong here. It's just you experimenting and doing whatever you like doing with bead embroidery, and that's the beauty of it. Right. Lucy's saying, loving this creation station tonight. So many different hints and tips for bead embroidery. I didn't know we were going to end up with bead embroidery, and this is the beauty of it. Like, we just sort of think something and we do it, and we just kind of like sort of just get on with it. And yeah, I love bead embroidery, so I could do bead embroidery for hours. But we could have done a stitch with it, but we've been doing stitching for sort of a long time, every single week, so it was just nice to do something different. I love to use these beads together and so one on the top of the other as well. I think that would look really good. Right, I'm going to have to go and sort my children out, as it is a school night still. I can't wait. We got another 2 weeks, 3 weeks of schools. Is it 3 weeks? And then it's going to be the summer holidays. I really can't wait for the summer holidays. Linny's asking, what type of clasp would you use? Like, to be honest, like any clasp you want. You could use a button on one side, and then you could make a buttonhole on the other side with maybe a row of beads or all sorts of different things you could do. You could use a 2-hole clasp, which we normally use for stitching. You could stitch that on there, because with that one, let me just grab one. Have I got one near me? Or maybe even 3-hole as well would do. I'm just going to grab one. It doesn't matter. It's probably not going to be the right size. But these ones are perfect because they slide apart. But what I would do if I use something like this, I would actually stitch the loops in, like at the end of the bracelet. I would stitch it in between my front and back fabric, just like that. So it just disappears, and all you see is the kind of like the clasp, and then this would sort of come apart. Now you could use a toggle clasp. It's really a choice, your choice, what sort of clasp you would want to use with it, and the possibilities are endless. You could use a little box clasp, anything. You could use a hook and eye, you know, the sort of clasp, maybe like what you have on your bras, sort of fittings. There is so many different things you could use at the end. It doesn't really matter. I usually like to leave maybe like a 1/2 centimeter, sort of a 1/4 of an inch, or just less of a 1/4 of an inch wiggle room, because you can always extend the clasp with a couple of beads if you need to. But with bead embroidery, once you glued it, you can't really take any length away. You can always add a tiny bit at the end with a couple of beads, but you can't really take it away. But any clasp as well. I got other clasp here which are like sort of a larger. This could be sewn on there. I like that type of clasp. Magnetic clasp, if you wanted to. If you wanted to use a small magnetic clasp, I probably would use 2, like one on this side and one on this side. Or like, you know, there's any clasp. It's the same thing. You could hide it in between the materials, whatever you're using. So it's a beautiful thing to do. Right, thank you so much for watching tonight. I haven't even asked for pictures tonight. I just got so excited about bead embroidery. I don't even know what you've been up to this week. You haven't told me. We're gonna have to get a double catch up next week with and actually next Wednesday is going to be really special, because next Wednesday is my birthday. So I'm going to spend my birthday doing Crescent Station. I got Coke in my glass tonight, but next Wednesday I might have a cheeky glass of wine with you. So it will be interesting. We might have to work with bigger beads then. Because definitely after half a glass of wine, I can't see the size 15 seed beads at all. But hey ho. So everybody have a beautiful week. I will be back on Totally Wednesday morning next week, 10 a.m. And I think we're doing Spiral Staircase. I never know what's in the diary. And then next Wednesday night, I don't even know what we're playing with it. But if you check it out on the website, it will be there. And yeah, have a beautiful week, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. And I will see you next week. Bye, bye, bye.